Hello and welcome to Lion and Mouse Commentary. I'm Tori and this is my best friend Holland.
Hello.
If you're new to our show, we rank various forms of entertainment by different categories out of a total score of 10, with only 2 points allowed for our personal taste. We break down everything as we go, so you won't get confused. Feel free to agree, disagree, or just find something new. Be sure to tread lightly. As always, there's hot takes and spoilers. Cut to the intro. Okay, so today we are doing, back by popular demand, we are doing the next Twilight film, Eclipse.
Yay.
This is familiar to me, blind to Holland, as the rest of the series has been. Here is some facts about this film. Okay, so Eclipse was released June 30th, 2010, which was only 7 months after New Moon released. That's how quickly they were churning these movies out. Directed by David Slade, the screenplay was again by Melissa Rosenberg. Produced by Karen Rosenfeld and Wick Godfrey. Stars Kristen Stewart again, Robert Pattinson again, Taylor Lautner again, Billy Burke again. Dakota Fanning is also listed as a high build actress on this, which is okay. And then Bryce Dallas Howard. Bryce Dallas Howard's in this movie. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But
I called it when we were watching it. I was like, that looks like Bryce Dallas Howard.
I
This is a
forgot
different
that
girl.
they changed the actress and that she played. Anyway, I'll talk about that. But and our favorite thing is the Google synopsis. I'm going to do another dramatic reading. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Danger once again surrounds Bella as a string of mysterious killings terrorizes Seattle and the malicious vampire continues her infernal quest for revenge. Amid the tumult, Bella must choose between her love for Edward and her friendship with Jacob, knowing that her decision may ignite the long simmering feud between vampire and werewolf. Was that a good reading?
That was a great dramatic reading. And that was one of the worst synopsises that I have heard about a movie. Actually, it really wasn't that terrible.
The synopsis is pretty accurate.
It's just over dramatic.
The story is that bad.
No, because we're kind of jumping ahead here, but I feel like that synopsis is talking about, it's emphasizing the most minor parts of the plot, and it is not emphasizing what the majority of the screen time is devoted to.
Okay. All right. Well, fair. All right. So then with that said, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So that's kind of a good segue into our first category for movies, which is plot and story delivery with a total possible score of 2. I gave this a 0.
I guessed. I was
going
to guess. I should guess your scores as we go. This is our third Twilight saga.
Uh-huh.
I should try to guess your scores before you say them.
Sure.
All right. We'll do that with the next category.
We'll try that. Yeah. So again, I think this is pretty par for the course for Twilight films that we've evaluated. Yeah. Horrible. Terrible plot. I actually hated the plot of this movie. Mm-hmm. I thought the plots for the previous movies were bad, but I detested the plot of this movie. It's just bad. It's so bad. For one, I also think this movie, just in general, I think this movie suffers from the same thing that previous iterations have, whereas, or in that, the plot, nothing is really explained to you. If you have not read the books, you're assumed to just sink or swim. And either you follow the plot or you don't. There was so much of this plot, like, where it was maybe a throwaway line or half of a sentence that explained something that was pretty pertinent to the story or some backstory or just an explanation. And if you didn't know the book, you had no idea what was going on half the time. There's so much of this movie where I had to pause it and ask Tori, like, what in the world are they talking? How was I supposed to know this? How was I supposed to understand this? This was why, the reason why, and Tori basically had to explain it to me. And maybe it was backed by like one line, but for the most part, you had to have read the book before to really know what was going on.
Yeah,
But
a lot of the time it's like they mentioned this, but the mention of that means nothing without the context of like the lore that's built in the books. And so because a lot of that is completely missing, it's like I don't understand anything about these characters or what's happening right now or why they're acting the way they are.
Yeah. So a couple problems that I have. In general, you can just go ahead and click off if you are fragile, because I pretty much have nothing positive to say about the plot of this movie. The conflict, so the synopsis that Tori just read, sure, those things are true. They are happening in the plot, but the entire plot of this movie, literally, the entire plot of this movie is the conflict of, is Bella going to marry Edward, and is Edward going to turn Bella into a vampire? That is the entirety of this movie. The whole plot centers around that. And to make it all better, we have two extremely immature people faced with making these insanely big commitments, lifelong commitments, and each of them are willing to make one of the lifelong commitments, and they're not interested in making the other. And it's just so nonsensical. It's like, if Bella is mature enough to decide that she wants to be a vampire forever because of her boyfriend that she met not even 2 years ago, but, ooh, marriage is a big commitment. And Edward is fully ready to marry some human girl that he met not even 2 years ago, but no, turning into a vampire is too big of a commitment. You don't know what you're doing. It's so ridiculous. It's so the fact that this is the centrality of the entire plot of this movie, and everything else is really just kind of sprinkled in to like maybe kind of sort of try and give you an idea that something else is going on, but it's not. None of that stuff really even matters. At the end of the movie, all the other little subplots and everything, it has no bearing on the story, because it's kind of, I mean, I guess arguably you could say it's not completely resolved at the end, but for the most part, all of these problematic, conflicts that are happening are irrelevant, because the whole conflict is Bella gonna say yes to marrying Edward? Ooh, we don't know. Is Edward gonna turn Bella into a vampire? Oh, we don't know. Like, wow, that's the whole plot. And it's not even that interesting. So that, first of all, is problematic. Here's some other problematic things. I kind of already mentioned there's no way to really follow the plot. I mean, you can follow the plot, but it's difficult to follow the plot unless you have either read the book or this is not your first time watching. The delivery of the plot, it takes about 30 minutes of this movie before it even gets interesting enough to watch. I was bored through the first 30 minutes of the movie. And it's not just because I don't like Twilight, it's because nothing interesting happened. Literally, people just kind of talk to each other about the plot that I've already mentioned, and nothing interesting is happening. I thought the most interesting, the part where the first moment where something interesting happened was this council meeting that Jacob took Bella to on the reservation, where she kind of hears this backstory. And even the backstory wasn't really that interesting. I thought it was very convoluted, because the whole point is that this is the origin of the rivalry or the bad blood between the vampires and the werewolves. And even then, it's not really well explained. Like, the werewolves couldn't change into werewolves, or they could, but then there's one vampire that's murdered them, but there's a man, but then there was a woman, but again, it was just something that was not well explained. So even the interesting parts of the movie are so convoluted and just haphazardly rushed through, because another problem I had was we got to get back to scenes of Edward and Bella making out. There's so many scenes where like nothing.
How many of them are necessary?
Constructive.
None of them.
It's not constructive at all.
No.
It's just, oh, let's just have Edward and Bella start talking about something, and then it turns into a makeout session. It's just ridiculous. There's some of the little bullets we use in our sheets to take notes says overuse of concept, and I crossed out concept and wrote kissing because this movie had an overuse of kissing. It was just too much.
Yeah.
I guess you could say this other plot line that's going on is this vampire army that's being, all these people are newly turning into vampires, and this vampire army.
Oh, you mean the subplot that gets a total of 7 minutes of screen time in this entire movie?
Yes, exactly. Well, it kind of starts at the beginning of the movie, which I think that whole scene is a little ridiculous with this first guy whose name we don't even learn at all until towards the end of the movie, where we actually see somebody call this guy by his name. Do you remember? What is his name? Riley. Who's this guy, random Joe Schmo, walking around in the rain in who knows where. We don't know where.
I think
because
it's supposed to
be
Forks,
Seattle.
Seattle. Okay. I was under the impression
because
that
he's
it was
from
Forks.
Forks, and then he went missing in Seattle, right?
I don't actually remember. You could be right. I don't actually remember.
Who even knows? See, we can't even figure it out, and Tori's read the books.
All I know is he's from Forks, so I assumed that this all happened, the first scene happened in Forks, but maybe it did not. He could have been in Port Angeles, which is another locale that's frequented a few times in the series. It could have been Seattle, because the Seattle News was covering it. I don't know.
So see, again, just details that we're not even told in the plot that could help build this story for you, but it's irrelevant because the only relevant plot is, are Edward and Bella going to end up together? Nothing else is relevant enough to get any attention. But I don't understand why at the opening scene, so this big opening scene that's supposed to be really dramatic and intense and, draw you into the story, is this guy who gets force pushed into a building and he's totally fine. He has no injuries. And then a vampire bites him on the hand and suddenly he's dying. Like, really? This is... okay, this feels like...
It's the venom.
Yeah, this feels like I'm not supposed to take any of this seriously, like it's a spoof film. But no, it's dead serious. And then they're building this vampire army, and this whole plot is like, oh my gosh, these vampire army, because they're newly turned into vampires, they're like super strong, and they're really fast, and we have this huge army coming, and it turns out the huge army is 10 people, and they're fighting 6 or 7 of the Cullens and a whole pack of werewolves. So why am I supposed to be frightened of this imminent threat that we've been building up this whole movie, and now it doesn't even look like anything scary? And then guess what? It actually isn't anything scary, because they literally are one punch killing all these vampires and busting their heads off, and there's no threat whatsoever. So like, even this big conflict that's supposed to be like exciting and full of action is not even threatening. There really is almost no conflict in this movie when you really look at it. And that's just frustrating to watch as a viewer, because now we're just watching things happen and events unfold that have no stakes and nothing really interesting. And when we get into characters, I mean, the plot is so thready that you need good characters to move the plot forward. And when we get into characters, we'll kind of talk more about that. I'm sure Tori might have some notes as well. But so what should be carried as a drama between really strong characters is not happening. And so instead, the other parts of the plot that are supposed to bring some physical peril or distress or conflict to our main protagonist is not threatening at all. So the whole plot is already weak just as a concept, but then there's no reason to either care about our protagonists or feel that they're threatened by antagonists. And that's just overall problematic just for a story. The dialogue and the writing is some things we kind of touch on with this section. The dialogue is extremely difficult to follow at times, and other times it's just sounds so forced. Like the words that they're saying is literally just to provide exposition, but then it's given so quickly or hurried or they're mumbled through that it's really difficult to pay attention to. It's just really convoluted. The whole plot point where Bella goes back to see her mom and she's talking about going to college in Alaska, that whole conversation that they have was something that you could not catch the first time watching it, because it's just so hurried through and all these lines are given as if they're throwaway lines, but it actually is filling you in on the plot. But then really none of that was necessary to move forward in the story, or to move our characters forward, or to move the story forward. A couple things that are just in general, just little notes that I have as things that are kind of problematic. Werewolf telepathy, that's a thing. I thought we kind of covered the werewolf lore in the first, but
they talk about that in New Moon.
Did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, they talked about that in New Moon.
That's just kind of odd, because they're all talking about how they just hear, but they're not telepathically talking to each other. They just hear each other's thoughts all the time.
Yeah, basically.
Well, where did that come from? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That's not like based in any like logistical lore, but okay, sure. Imprinting, we bring that topic up. That makes no sense whatsoever. Like, this is just slightly creepy and doesn't seem like a really good or safe or moral thing to have going on here, so that's great.
I'm hard not to bust out laughing right now.
you can, that's a problem.
Yep.
The Jacob is apparently a racist because he thinks that Bella would be better off dead than turning into a vampire. I mean, that sounds pretty racist to me. Like, you're a mythical, fantastical creature as a werewolf, and here these vampires are, and you're just, I mean, you see them at the school parking lot, and that's fine, but, that seems problematic to me. When Edward gives this whole big romantic discussion about how if he's so old-fashioned and just would rather take things really slow and take Bella on a date with the chaperone and ask her dad and then get down on one knee and then ask Bella to marry him, and then, he proposes. Well, he definitely didn't ask her dad or tell her dad, so here this really romantic guy is just gonna force Bella to marry him and say goodbye to her whole family and just leave her dad in the dark. That's a great idea. No, sure. Yeah, okay. Great. Why does the Vampire Army do the Pirates of the Caribbean walk from Seattle? They can just sink to the bottom of the ocean. Like, Pirates of the Caribbean, it made sense because they're skeletons. There's nothing to keep them afloat, but I guess, vampires don't need to breathe underwater, or they just are not buoyant at all. I guess they can't swim too, because if they could just do the Pirates of the Caribbean walk, then they probably aren't able to swim. That didn't make any sense to me. Why Jacob just picks Bella up and carries her around and has to take his shirt off to do that, and he takes his shirt off for literally no reason at all.
Literally all the time for no reason whatsoever.
There's no explanation of why. He's just gotta, show off his abs.
He put a lot of work into that for this movie.
I mean, I'm not hating on the work that Taylor Lautner put, because I do remember that story from, New Moon. He almost was not cast as Jacob, and he put in the work, and I mean, he did a good job, but
worked really hard, and I guess they were like, we got to get our money's
worth out of the abs of.
But does it make sense plot-wise? Absolutely not. You could be wearing a shirt, sir.
Yep. Completely untimely as well. We have this army coming, and now Jacob's just going to pick Bella up and carry her around to see if anybody can smell her. And then only because he didn't want Edward to pick her up and carry her. What was the point of that?
Because his wolf stench masked her human scent.
Right. But it was unnecessary for him to even carry her at all because Edward had it covered. And then Jacob was like, no, I want to do it. Are we in high school?
Probably.
Yeah, we're in high school. I mean, literally.
Literally.
But also, like, this feels more like grade school antics here.
Yeah.
So just lots of, like, small things throughout the movie. And then the vampire army battle, it's this just weird anticlimactic battle. And then the redhead vampire, Victoria, shows up to kill Edward to get revenge because he killed her boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
And then, all right, let's literally pause this whole battle and let's just try and talk it out real quick. We're going to have a conversation really calmly. And then we're going to just rip somebody's head off and it's over. Like, I'm telling you, I'm watching this whole plot and either I'm bored out of my mind throughout the whole thing, or I feel like I'm not supposed to take any of this seriously. And it's just like, I don't even know what I just watched in watching this movie. So I think that's most of what I have. Another thing, Jessica, Anna Kendrick's character, is the valedictorian.
Yeah.
Wasn't she like the dumbest person in the first two movies?
I don't think she was necessarily dumb. I think she was just kind of
a ditz.
Like a ditz. Like,
but she's the valedictorian?
Yeah. Forks is apparently a... No, I'm not going to say that.
They don't have the best education system, I guess.
I was going to say, the future of Forks doesn't look that bright.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, is it like her speech is talking about, yeah, it's our time to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. Like, I kind of got the impression that that whole speech that she gives was supposed to be kind of the theme of the movie, kind of like how the whole Shakespeare, from the last movie was like the theme, if you will, the thread that they kind of had to run through the whole movie. And I was watching that and I was like, so you're telling me, yeah, it's our time to make mistakes and figure out what we want to do with our lives. And it's like, okay, that would make a lot of sense if Edward and Bella were like, hey, let's go move to Maine for the summer.
Yeah.
But no, they're saying, hey, let's make two very permanent decisions with our lives. Yeah. But let's just do it. And if it's a mistake, we've just made a mistake.
What if we went bungee jumping this summer? It's probably more what Jessica meant.
Right. Or like, maybe I should try a new job at working at a pizzeria instead of, working at Starbucks. Like, that's...
Yeah.
Was that
the
theme?
I think
of the movie?
I think partly, yeah, especially because a lot of the time when they're during that scene where Jessica is talking, we're not really looking at Jessica. The camera's focused on Bella. And Bella's like watching Jessica and she's like, "Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's good." And she gets like kind of choked up and she's like, "Yeah. We can do this." And it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Yeah. So overall, I think the plot is dull at best and problematic at worst. So 0 out of 2.
Okay. I gave mine half a point out of 2. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what you said, although I don't necessarily disagree with any of it. Let me just talk. I think my notes are going to be kind of brief compared to yours, just because I think your first impression notes are so much more interesting to listen to. So anyway, we start the movie with the whole Riley incident, and I think it's so weird because I don't know who this man is. I don't know why he's important. I don't care that he just got bit. I don't care that he's dying. I don't care about him at all. Why? No, nothing. There's no attachment in any way.
And this is the opening of the film.
And it feels just like in scenes in previous movies where it's like, I don't give a flip about vampires hurting people I don't care about. I know that sounds callous, but as a viewer, it's like I need some sort of attachment, or if there's no attachment, I need some sense of danger, and there's really none of that in the beginning. So I'm like, okay, well, we're setting this up and I already don't care. But like you said, the entire conflict of the movie is really this weird back and forth argument that Edward and Bella keep having about, I'll marry you if you change me. Well, I'll change you if you marry me. Okay, well, how about, and I know that, like, my question is, why are we in such a rush? And Bella answers the question like, well, I don't want to get older than you. But like, do you really have at 18 such an old lady complex that the idea of you being 19 or 20 or 21, you're not going to really look much different. Like, it's not like you're going to age 20 years in those 3 years. Like, you can't put a little more time and effort into actually deciding this is what you want to do. No, it's because the entire motivations of our main characters are all selfish and fueled by hormones. So the entire plot hinges on the fact that, like, Bella and Edward just can't keep their hands off of each other. And so, like, that's a terrible plot for a movie. It's terrible and it's boring. And all of the main parties exhaust this to the point of boredom. This movie is boring. There's no stakes to anything. And like the big dangerous, like, oh, where there's going to be a fight with these newborn vampires and it's going to be so bad we got to get the werewolves involved. And like, no, it's not, because there's 12 of them, and I don't even think we really needed the werewolves, but they had to include it because for some reason we had to convolutingly, I'm sorry, I'm ranting so bad right now, but like, we had to somehow, in some convoluted way, we had to tie Jacob into every single plot point in this movie, even the ones that are not his business and he's not involved in. But for some reason we have to tie that in to the point where Bella is like, well, I love you too. And it's like, shut up.
You clearly don't, because we've watched you abuse him.
Yes. Yeah. You
for
clearly,
2.5 movies.
And the fact of the matter is, Bella, that you love that Jacob is a simp for you. That's what you love. You don't actually love him because, yeah, you're emotionally abusive.
But she doesn't love Edward either.
Right.
She just loves herself.
Yeah. And it's like, there's no, like, these characters, like, have no, like, actual clear boundaries that they, like, set and respect for each other. No, because nobody respects anybody in this movie. They're all just selfish. But I know that sounds like a character note, but that is the plot. The plot is based on that, and it's so weak. The most interesting part of this entire movie... I'm sorry, I keep punching the bed that I'm sitting on.
It's gonna be coming through the mic so loud.
Probably. I just get upset.
Fired up.
The most interesting part of this entire movie, in my opinion, is all the backstories. And they have nothing to do with what's going on in the actual plot of the movie. But I think Rosalie's backstory is really neat. I think Jasper's backstory is really neat. I think the third wife backstory is really neat. Do those really have any bearing on the plot? No. They give us some insight into the characters, and I guess you could argue that the third wife story kind of comes into play at the end of the movie because Bella then cuts her own arm, as the third wife did, in order to distract Victoria to give Edward the opportunity to rip her head off. So, like, I guess you could say that that's kind of a plot point, but, and so it's kind of relevant to the rest of the movie. But it's really, I think it's sad when, and do I think the backstory should not have been included? Not necessarily. I think it's fine to give some characters backstories that we don't know a lot about, but if those are the most interesting parts of your entire story, that's a problem. I shouldn't look forward more to hearing about the 5 minutes of Rosalie killing her abusive husband or fiance back in the 1920s. Why is that what I'm looking forward to most when I watch this movie and not the main story? Oh yeah, because the main story sucks. So that's really where my half point comes from, is the fact that I think the backstories are kind of nice insights into building the world, but at the end of the day, they don't actually really connect and build this specific installment's story. They really just do more to like build the history of a character more than they add to the plot. So because of all of that, yeah, I really just could only give it half a point out of 2.
All right, so our next category is characters. So total possible score of 3. I gave this 0 out of 3. And truth be told,
I forgot to guess.
Oh.
It's okay.
I was thinking about it, and I almost gave some credit for those backstories that you mentioned, but I didn't. So I'll start with that, I guess. So I do agree that the backstories of these minor characters are interesting, but they're not very original. The story of Rosalie is interesting to watch, but if that was if that scene, that information was in any other movie, if it was just part of any other film with somebody that has that as their backstory, it would be just normal. Like, that's just a normal, common kind of backstory that people will have. This woman was mistreated and she got her revenge, and I don't think she was married at the time, but kind of that Black Widow kind of story. And even the time setting of like the 1920s, 1940s, whatever era that was, is extremely common. You wouldn't even blink if that was a backstory. You would just expect it in kind of any other movie. But because the plot of this movie is so terrible, it seems really, really good. You're like, you finally have a breath of fresh air because, oh wow, something that actually I can hold my attention and I can pay attention, and I actually care about what this lady is saying because the actress is delivering her lines really well, and she's, the other minor characters in her flashback scene are really detestable, and it's actually really good. Like, no, it's really just normal. It's kind of a standard, normal, unoriginal backstory. You're just so surprised to find it in this movie. And the same with Jasper's backstory. I think it's interesting, like, oh, he was a Civil War soldier and, got, seduced by these vampire women. Like, that's not anything original. It's really not. It's interesting, but none of the backstories that were given really give us a lot of insight into who these people are. It just tells you, hey, these things happened to me. The end. And yeah, it does. I would agree that it does somewhat contribute to the plot, meaning that Jasper's backstory kind of gives you reason why he should prep the vampires for fighting the young vampires. But we didn't need a backstory flashback to know that.
Right.
It could have just been part of the story anyways. And the same with the werewolf tribe. We didn't need that whole backstory to even really move the plot forward. And it really didn't give us a lot of insight into the characters. So that's why I really couldn't even give it a lot of points, a lot of credit for that, because it's not anything original. The stories, the backstories that we have that are new and possibly interesting are just unoriginal. And there's really no indication of real depth. It really seems more like these backstories are just for plot convenience. We're going to give you these backstories so that, oh, hey, Jasper knows about these young vampires and how they fight and their fighting tactics. Convenient for the plot. Okay, let's give him this backstory. Rather than, this is Jasper's backstory and we've been seeing these small insights into who he is and why he is the way he is, and now we find out why he is the way he is. Oh, it's because of this backstory. No, it was really just we need somebody that knows what the heck new vampires are like and how do we fight them. Okay, which character have we not looked into yet? Jasper. Yeah, let's make him the expert there. So that's why I didn't attribute any value into the scoring, because I just don't think it brings a lot of value to the film. For our main cast, the characters are all terrible. They are all terrible. I can't emphasize enough how terrible they are. Again, I think you really touched a lot on this in your plot because it is the plot.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to overdo what's already been said, but yeah, we just have two very selfish people with Bella and Edward just being selfish and wanting things their way, and their relationship with each other is extremely toxic. There's nothing self-serving or self-giving, or there isn't even really any compassion towards each other. They don't even seem to be very interested in one another. It's just, they're so unlikable, and their relationship with each other is just, I like you because of what you give me and make me feel.
Yeah.
And Edward is supposed to be portrayed as this, he's this just older vampire, so he's really knowledgeable and wise, and look, he's such a gentleman because he's from another time. And it's like, no, this dude is so toxic and controlling, and he lies to her, and he's manipulative. And then Bella, we can't even really feel bad that he's doing all of that to Bella, because Bella does the same thing to him and Jacob.
Yeah.
So it's horrible. All of these horrible qualities you would not want in just a friend. We're supposed to see these people as our heroes.
Right.
It's ridiculous. The way that as possessive as he is of Bella, and just like kind of all over her that he is, and I don't mean that in like a like with innuendo, but just the fact that he's just like, all he wants to do is to be near her and watch her sleep, and he doesn't want anybody talking to her, and he doesn't want her traveling without him, and I mean, just this whole like possessiveness that he has for Bella. I still stand by it. There is no way she is his first girlfriend, or even his first wife. Like, there's no way. He is so quick to marry a girl after knowing her for like 2 years max, and he wants to marry her.
While still in school?
Yeah.
Or she's still in school.
And he wants to just go ahead and marry her? I stand by the fact, there's no way she's his first wife.
If they were 30, I'd be like, okay.
Right.
Timeline, all right. But like, she's like 16, 17 when they meet.
Yeah,
like,
she's 17 and now she's 18.
Yeah.
So max 2 years that he's known her. There's no way. There's no way she's the first girl he's ever fallen in love with. This guy is like a serial dater, and this is not safe. This guy's dangerous. Hide your kids, hide your wife. I mean, it's terrible. And then Bella dumps Jacob, like yesterday's newspaper, like almost in the opening of the thing, the movie, and she's just as toxic to Jacob as he is to Bella, or as Edward is to Bella. And then Jacob, we can't even feel sorry for him.
No,
because he is just as like toxic and possessive of Bella. I'm going
to talk about, maybe I'll just talk about it now.
Go ahead.
The whole thing with Jacob is him being like, I know you love me. Like, shut the heck up, man. You're being really weird. And like, it doesn't, and like, okay, let's just say for sake of argument that Jacob's right. Okay. And that everything he says is 100% true. And that Bella has strong romantic feelings for Jacob. Let's just say for the sake of argument for a second that he is correct. She still has never said that, and she doesn't ever have to, so he still should back up off behind that boundary line.
Even more than that, she said no.
Yes.
She said back off.
Yes,
no.
Exactly. Like, dude, I'm sorry, but like, it is so unattractive when a man is told no and he don't take no for an answer. Just accept the no and move on.
Right.
And he doesn't do that, and it's so frustrating. But Edward does a lot of the same sort of behavior.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, Team Edward or Team Jacob. They're actually kind of like the same person in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Like, one just happens to be a vampire and one just happens to be a wolf. And like, but like in a lot of their behavior tendencies toward Bella
and each other,
they're
the same person.
They're the same kind of character.
Yep.
Just copy paste.
Yep. And it's just, you can't even... Everything we learn... So our main three characters, Edward, Jacob, and Bella, everything new that we learn about them is terrible. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a flaw. Everything we learn about them is a character flaw and a poor character development, poor character, unlikable, just not somebody you would want to be around. Like, nothing we learn about them is admirable in this movie. And in addition to nothing that we learn new about them is admirable, everything that is reinforced from what we already know about them, we reinforce all the negative qualities about them. And that's terrible. Why would these three people be the center of your story and be the people we're supposed to root for? We can't even root for these people. And the only reason that we know that they quote unquote love each other is because they just throw those words around and say that they do, but nothing is ever shown that they really care about each other or even let alone want what's best for each other. But we don't even see that they have any kind of affection for each other, mm-hmm. except for their multiple scenes where Edward and Bella just won't stop kissing.
Right.
But even those situations, it's not that, it's because they love each other. It's because they're teenagers.
Yeah.
And we don't know it's almost like they don't know what else to say to each other because they're that uninteresting. So now they're just going to make out.
Well, and that's the thing is like, and this is a big problem with Edward and Bella in the whole series, is that we basically don't know any of their interests other than each other. It's like their entire personalities are just become each other. And so in scenes like that, like they have it almost feels like Stephenie Meyer just had to fill the space. So it's not like they're having conversations about like things that either of them are interested about or care about, because all they're interested in about is each other in a weird, unhealthy obsession. And so what else is there for two 18-year-old, 17-year-olds to do? Kiss, I guess, because there's there's no other foundation to like their relationship, which is so awful, but it's how it is. Like, there's nothing there. Like, it's like, I don't know, this weird physical need to just be around each other 24/7. Like, there's a line that Charlie says in this movie, and I actually think it's a brilliant line, and Bella just like, Dad, you don't get me. But he goes, why don't you just like put a little distance between you and him? Like, you don't have to spend every day with him. And he's right. He's right. But she's just like, Dad, you just don't get it, okay? And I'm like, oh, gosh. Ah! Anyway.
It's atrocious. Yeah, Jacob, I thought... Also, I don't understand why the movie opens with him having this emo hair, and then he never has it for the rest of the movie. I don't get that.
Oh, no.
He just has it once and then never again.
Yeah, I guess
so. Yeah, I thought he was good looking out. He seemed to like really care about Bella and be like, look, you would have to say goodbye to everybody. And he makes some valid points, but then turns out, nah, this dude's just in it for himself.
Yeah. Like,
he doesn't actually care about Bella. He just wants her for himself.
Right.
And the other thing with, I literally don't have any notes about anybody else because they're just that they're not just like terrible characters. They're so uninteresting. There's nothing interesting about any of them except for, I would say, Jasper's backstory isn't even that interesting. Maybe Rosalie's is interesting, except it's so predictable and it's already been overdone. But the Cullen family, at the end of the movie, they like offer this poor little
newborn
vampire girl asylum, essentially. And they're like, no, it's okay. We'll take care of her. You know, she didn't know what she was doing. Like, we'll take care of her. We'll protect her. And then they just stand there and let her get murdered by Dakota Fanning's posse.
Yeah.
And it's like,
The Volturi.
okay, so you're supposedly this family that has these very high standards and high morals, and yet you're just gonna stand by and let some person get murdered? Like, what? I feel like I can't even root for the rest of this family, which I didn't in the first movie when they all were like, yes, well, I'll turn Bella into a vampire. That's a great idea, because they're idiots.
Yeah.
But now they have they allegedly were walking this moral high ground by being these vampire vegetarians, whatever the heck that means. But no, they actually are still only in it for themselves, because here they were going to extend the olive branch and take care of this, like, kid, literally a child that needs help.
I think she's supposed to be like 14.
And they're like, yeah, all right, well, you can kill her. We're not going to actually stand up to you. We're not actually going to put ourselves in an uncomfortable position to take care of this girl. Like, they literally did nothing. They're just like, oh,
Okay.
well, okay, you can just murder her. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, if they didn't even put up a fight, like, they were not even threatened. They're just like, oh, well, we can't go against these Dakota Fanning.
Can't go against Dakota.
She's got top billing,
Her character's name is Jane, in case you forgot.
I forget all their names.
Okay.
So it's just, to me, that is just a small snapshot of what these characters are made of and, like, who these people really are. And none of it is admirable. There's nothing we can admire in these characters or there's certainly nothing that we should want to emulate. And so I think that for a movie, especially where the plot of this film really is a drama, if you like dramas, that's fine. I like dramas, dramatic films or TV shows that are, like, have all these, like, kind of soap opera-esque plot lines and romance plot lines. Like, I don't have a problem with that. That is not a problematic plot, but you have to have strong characters that can carry it. And if your characters can't carry the drama, like the plot of a drama, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so for this, especially because this movie would have to be a character-heavy story in order to carry a dramatic plot, it's even more obvious how poor these characters are, and they can't carry it forward. Even the villains aren't even interesting either, because we don't know anything about them. We're just like, well, they told us that we're supposed to believe that they're bad, so we're going to believe that they're bad because they have red eyes. And if they didn't have red eyes, then we wouldn't know if they're bad or not. So it's horrible. And I tried, I couldn't give it any points. I just couldn't.
Okay.
So
That's fine.
0 out of 3.
Okay.
I do think my one kind of little caveat would probably be, I do think the casting is done pretty well and the acting is improved in this film compared to prior films. But it's not, to me, that's not enough to give the characters more credit than what I think they deserve, which is nothing. So
Okay.
0 out of 3.
For me, I gave it 1 out of 3 points, and that 1 point literally lies simply in, I do think the acting is done really well. It is unfortunate how ridiculous the situations are that have to be acted, but I think they did a pretty dang good job with the terrible material that they were given. So that's where the 1 point comes from. Now let me talk about all the terrible things I hate.
I would agree. I think one scene that really shows that these individuals can act well is the scene where Jacob and Edward and Bella are all in the tent, and the conversation that Jacob and Edward have with each other. I could not tell you what they talked about because I don't even remember. It was that, like, innocuous, but it felt like a genuine conversation that these two guys would have. Like, it felt very natural.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that the delivery of a lot of these ridiculous lines is actually pretty good. Does it make the lines any more ridiculous? No. And does it make the characters any more likable? No. But yeah, I have to echo a lot of what you said. I hate the whole, I just hate the angst of Bella. I hate it. I'm just so tired of your lead protagonist, the person that the story is kind of through the eyes of. So that would be Bella. I'm so tired of just like the angsty, nobody understands me protagonist. I'm just tired of it. And it comes to a boiling point in this movie, I think, with Bella being like, I'm just not understood. And, I don't believe in the sanction of marriage because my parents divorced, and so obviously love is dead, and like all these and I'm like, I'm just tired of it. And Edward and Jacob both suck, and like you said at the beginning of the movie, you're kind of like, okay, Jacob's not that bad, like, he's got some good points, obviously, like, Bella's made her choice, and he needs to respect that, but like he's got some good points. And then as the movie progresses, like, he just gets so greedy, and like it gets to this point where you just, like, I don't blame Bella for punching him in the face, even though that scene is very weird and, like, whatever. But but then she just turns around and she does the same thing to him because Jacob says, I won't kiss you again unless you ask me. And then Bella gets weirdly desperate because she thinks she's about to lose her best friend. So she turns around and she tells Jacob, okay, kiss me, like, in the snow. Like, who does? No! I don't tell my guy friends things like that. What the heck is wrong with you? What? And it's simply a manipulation tactic. It's her sitting here trying to emotionally manipulate Jacob into doing what she wants him to do, which is don't go run off into the main fight because I don't want you to get hurt. So I will, if I ask you to do this because I know that that's what you want, even though I don't really want it. It's not like Bella actually wants that. She just knows it's the only thing that she can do to get him to do what she wants.
Well,
and so, like,
he was literally gonna go and do the exact same thing that Bella did over and over and over in the last movie because Edward wasn't there. Like, Jacob was about to go do the exact same thing that she just did for an entire movie.
Yeah, because Bella's a big fat hypocrite. She just is. And so I don't like any of them in this movie. It's particularly only Rosalie. Oh, Rosalie is the only one who speaks up and says, Bella, you're being a dang idiot about this whole thing. And like, I don't know if like everybody else in the Cullen family just genuinely thinks that it's a good idea. Like the stuff that like Bella and Edward are just, like, do they genuinely think that it's all a good idea? Or do they also share Rosalie's point of view? They just don't have the guts to say it?
No, there's no way. Because they, like, in the last movie, they all were like,
true.
oh,
like,
I would love to
we
have
already
you.
consider you family.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for Rosalie in this movie because
she needs to find a new family.
Yeah.
She just needs to adopt herself elsewhere.
She spends so much of this series being like, yo, you are a big dumb idiot. And Bella just being like, I get it, you just don't like me. And Rosalie's like, yeah, I kind of don't because you're an idiot. And like, I don't blame her. But okay, all of this kind of, yeah, okay. Also, quick note, nobody cares about Victoria and Riley in this movie. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Who? Don't care.
I mean, the fact that you don't even know anybody's name until the movie's almost over.
But the big thing about the characters is that zero characters learn anything, change for the better, decide to do something good. Zero. There's none of that. None of that. The only new character that I really like, and he doesn't even get much screen time at all, is Seth, the little young wolf. He's just kind of cool. Like, he's just happy to be there. And, like, that's it. We get about 90 seconds with him.
Yeah, you'd get, like, yeah, you do. I think you get about 90 seconds.
You get about 90 seconds with Seth. And then he doesn't exist. And then you also find out that Leah turned into a wolf because there's so many vampires around that all these people are changing into wolves. And, oh my gosh, a girl wolf? Oh, wow. But, like...
But that's not even explained.
It's literally touched on, and that's it. That's it. That we don't get any context, backstory, understanding, any of that. So, yeah. Characters are... They're just... If it would be one thing if all of these unlikable characters existed, but then like there was some redeeming moment or moral or lesson that was like learned, applied, and we saw the fruits of their growth. But none of that happens.
Or even if they just like got their comeuppance.
Yeah.
Like they had.
But nope, these are our main three characters. Well, Jacob doesn't really get what he wants, but let's just say Bella and Edward. They can be as terrible and toxic to themselves, to each other, to everybody else around them as they want to be, because at the end of the movie, they're still getting what they want, and I hate it. Anyway,
So why did you give it a point?
for the acting, that's it. That's it. The acting. So 1 point out of 3 for characters.
Okay. Our next category is aesthetics. And do you want to guess my
Yes,
score?
I'm
Out of a
gonna guess.
total possible score of 2,
You gave it half a point.
I did give it half a point.
Hey.
I did. I gave it half a point. So in general, I don't have a lot of overall, like just watching a movie. I didn't see any huge issues with, lighting, cinematography, things like that. So just kind of your broad net. I really didn't see any problems with kind of the overall visuals of the film. But I also really didn't see anything that was super notable that really like, wow, that
Like
actually
impressive, you mean?
That shot was really good, or wow, that lighting's really nice, or, nothing really impressed me. So I really don't, I don't want to give a lot of credit, but I also don't want to take away a lot of credit for that. So just start by that. But I did have some specific notes. I did think that the soundtrack, the songs that play in this movie are actually really nice. Like there's moments where whatever song was playing, I couldn't tell you what the names were or anything like that, but I was like, oh, this song actually fits really well. And it feels like it fits the mood, it fits the tone. The score, I didn't really notice any specific score that was really impressive or terrible. But I did not particularly like the soundtrack of the first two films. And this one, I was like, oh, it actually feels like it fits really well. It doesn't feel like they're just throwing teenage appealing music in the film so that people will go and buy these artists' albums. It just felt like it fit really well. The opening sequence with, a lot of rain, I feel like that was trying to be like high production value, but I just really saw it as like a lot of low visibility. You couldn't really see what was going on. You couldn't really tell what was going on. And I think a lot of that was also kind of to the plot because we weren't really told anything in that story. Jacob's letter, when Bella's holding it, we even paused the movie to try and figure out what the heck is going on here. Like, why are there words and then the words are crossed out and then there's like, are they passing a note back and forth? I thought maybe like, are they passing a note back and forth and after they've read it, they cross it out and write the next note and pass it, were they passing a note in class? Well,
But
no,
it seemed like the same handwriting to me.
yeah. So why were there lines crossed out? And then Tori pointed out they don't even go to the same school, so they wouldn't be passing notes. So that was just really confusing. And then the visibility was so poor, I couldn't read it, telling kind of what was going on. The edits, there's a part where it goes from when Edward and Bella are at the police station to then Bella's standing somewhere, some unknown location with the sun setting.
Florida.
But we don't know that.
Right.
She's just doing this hero pose.
Yeah.
And with the sunset, and then goes immediately to this conversation with Bella's mom, who's like, I'm the cool mom, like in Mean Girls or something. Like, it was so jarring to me that that transition just seemed really jarring. Other than that, I didn't notice anything that was really problematic about, editing or just kind of the overall visuals. But I did have some notes about other aesthetic points. The special effects, I think, are still not ideal in this movie. When they're running really fast, the vampires are running really fast. It still looks kind of campy. I get that this is, still technically the 2000s, but It still looks kind of campy. It doesn't age very well. The prosthetic, the visual effects, like the prosthetic on the one girl's face.
Emily.
Yes. It looks like they didn't take nearly as much effort in it as this time. And it looks like it's put on upside down almost. The way that kind of the scarring from the claw marks looked like it was like she had been scratched from her jawline up versus from the top of her head down. It looked very odd to me when I was watching it. I don't understand why the Volturi vampires are dressed in these very like Victorian-esque clothing, which I get is their like, it's just their style. It's kind of this stereotypical vampire look, if you will, except for Dakota Fanning, who just seems like she's just in a black cape all the time.
Yeah.
But then why do these vampires that are dressed very old and like old world style, why do like 3 out of the 4, like two out of the 3 or 3 out of the 4, I can't remember how many there were, but
There's 4 that travel.
they have Justin Bieber style hair. Like they literally have the Justin Bieber haircut from like 2010.
This scene, I think that's an issue too, is like this movie came out in June 2010, so it makes sense for that year for people to have hair that way, but these characters are supposed to be sort of frozen in time.
Right.
And so if they're not going to be following trends overall, why would these dudes just follow hair trend?
Like they should
it just doesn't make any sense.
They should be wearing white jeans and a purple hoodie if they're going to wear that hair, but they're not.
Exactly.
So it was just very odd. The CGI in the flashback scenes and I know that a lot of films do this, like with the CGI overall, I didn't think was very good. In the flashback scenes and in the flashback scenes, I know that in film, they'll film it during the daylight and then put a filter over it to make it look like nighttime. And it looked almost obviously so in Jasper's flashback scenes. It looks very obvious that it's not nighttime, but we're supposed to pretend that it's nighttime. And in Rosalie's flashback, this whole confrontation happens on the sidewalk outside of what maybe looks like maybe a town hall building, but clearly a downtown street with residential homes. And there's a shot over Rosalie's shoulder where this, really nefarious stuff is happening on the street outside. And you can see over Rosalie's shoulder behind her, somebody's house, the window to they don't have curtains drawn or anything, the just open glass window, and the lights are on inside and people are walking around inside their homes. Yeah. So this like seedy stuff is supposed to happen literally in full view of somebody in their house.
That could help you.
Right.
And probably can hear you.
Right. And I feel like that could have just been, I put that in aesthetics because I feel like that could have been easily mitigated if you just
chose a different location.
Or didn't have a person in there. Or drew the curtains on the windows. Like you didn't have to change the location. Just make it look like everybody's gone to bed at night.
That's
you know
true.
What I mean? The choreography, like the fight choreography of the final battle and with the werewolves and all of that is just, it looks hokey. It looks so campy to me. I was watching it and I was like, this guy literally just like one punched a vampire's head off. Like that's what we do now. I thought that killing a vampire was this really dramatic thing that like only the Volturi did. Like I thought that's what we were told in the last movie, that if a vampire wanted to die, they had to be killed by another vampire, and it was this big ordeal. And it's like, no, you just punch them and their head busts off their neck. That's it.
This is a fun behind the scenes story. We were watching this movie together and Holland paused the movie around this part because there's a part where Jasper says he tells the wolves that they shouldn't let the newborns get their arms around them because they can crush them. And Holland was like, but these wolves are the size of school buses. So how are they even going to get their arms around them? And it was very funny to me. Holland has a little stuffed dog and a little posable link, and we were recreating how improbable it would be, and it was very funny.
But then they still managed to make it happen. I feel like they just defied their own laws of physics when they did that. I was like, are you kidding me? They're gonna figure out a way to get... I tried to pick up a box from IKEA earlier today, and my arms were almost too short to get around that whole box. Like, how am I putting my arms around, like, something the size of a twin bed? Yeah. How is that happening for this fight scene? It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The CGI for the wolves, I know I mentioned in the last movie, there were moments where it looked a little... like, the angles made it look like the CGI wolves didn't look proportionally correct, and I think there were still some issues with that. It seemed a little better overall, but there still were just some issues with, I think, what I would call, like, anatomical accuracy of the wolves. I also, like, sorry, I'm kind of circling around a little bit, but back with the army battle, it was just not really a battle at all. There really didn't seem to be a lot of choreography, like fight choreography or anything interesting. And I mean, we know from previous films that they very commonly will put these actors on wires and have them like fly through the air, which looks hokey, but I mean, at least it would have been more interesting than kind of what we got. And then Victoria's head, so we're watching these vampires like one punch these other vampires' heads off, but then Victoria dies because Edward bites her head off. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, he can bite a person, and we know that vampires have, like, flesh. Otherwise, Bella wouldn't be, like, touching him. You know what I mean? It's like, so, but then he can bite through another vampire's whole neck to bite their head. Like, logistically, it just doesn't even make sense to me. Because,
yeah, and
you're gonna tell me that, like, oh, it's because their skin's as hard as marble. Like, but it's really not. Okay, it's really not. Because if it was, nothing else would follow the laws of physics.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't, if your skin was as hard as marble, I mean, how is he...
Then imagine when, like, Edward sits down in a classroom chair and it's like, thunk.
Right, exactly. So it's really not, like, that's not exactly, it's kind of hyperbole here. But then just one bite and her head just pops off, completely shatters like it was a marble statue. But we've never seen any other vampire die this way. Like, it was so nonsensical. I was more confused than, like, cheering that she was dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if I was watching this in the theater and I was actually invested in this movie, it would be a distraction to me, the way that happened, is the point I'm trying to make here. And then, you know, you light a vampire on fire, and literally it was like one little match and they spontaneously combust. So in addition to their skin being hard as marble, it's made of gasoline. Like, you just one little flicker of like a
lighter
flame
fluid,
and just boom,
campfire
bursts into flames.
What's the like campfire fuel?
Yeah. So like all of those things I attribute to aesthetics, even though I guess some people would say that falls into plot, but for me it was just, they were all visual moments that just seemed very jarring to me. And, but overall, the positives that I have and why I gave it half a point was, I think still, it's just very consistent with these films. The set designs are done so well, and the costumes are done very, very well. And I feel like I have to give credit because a lot of work goes into both of those things. And there are some moments where the visuals of the scenery that they're in, just the natural scenery, looks very beautiful. The scene where I think Jacob and Bella are walking, and you can see kind of like a lake or some body of water behind them, and the mountains even further behind that. It looked very beautiful. That was a moment where I was like, wow, they're in a really beautiful location, and it was framed nicely, and it just visually just looked great. And the Pacific Northwest still has very beautiful scenery, so I think that they captured those pretty well. on film. The one issue I did have with the costumes, and maybe this is a plot, or not, but I don't understand why Jacob wore denim jean shorts, and now in this film he's wearing cargo shorts. It was just kind of a weird aesthetic choice.
He exploded off all of his denim shorts, so these are his new shorts.
Yeah, and a good segue to that is I don't understand why the werewolves explode their clothing, but not their tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Like, they run around in their tennis shoes all the time and their shorts, and yet then they just turn into a wolf, and then when they appear again, they're like in their tennis shoes and their shorts again, but then they're not in their shorts when it's convenient for Jacob because he got crushed by a vampire that magically wrapped his arms around him. Now he doesn't have his shorts on, but every other werewolf magically found their shorts that exploded off of them. So exploded into shreds, and then they just like had a spare pair of shorts like behind a bush somewhere just in case. I mean, just I don't get the exploding shorts thing. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But there were some really good visuals as far as the set design, the scenery, the costumes. So I gave it half a point. Because to be fair, this movie, although the plot and the characters are not great, it's not offensive to look at. So visually, I gave it half a point for aesthetics.
Okay, for me, I gave it 1 out of 2 points for aesthetics. And a lot of the positives are ones that you already mentioned. I think the costumes are great. I think the set design is great. I think a lot of the outdoor sets and outdoor cinematography is really, really good. I also think the colored contacts that they've been giving the vampires looks more natural in this film.
I agree with that as well.
So I think that's a nice touch. I don't know if they just, invested in a better brand or what, but I think that the coloration of this film is really nice. There's none of that weird blue or fluorescent look that we got from the first movie. So the coloration is nice. I think the snowy landscapes and the snowy scenes are actually really beautiful as well. And I don't know how much of that snow was CGI and how much of it was like practical snow effects, but I think it's pretty seamless as far as visually. So I think that does well. The only thing that I have an issue with in the snowy scenes is there's no change in audio in the snowy scenes, and naturally in a snowy locale, your sound would be absorbed a little bit more, so it would change the way that like an echo would be heard, or just like normal like vocal reverberation would be a little different. There are a few weird things too that happen, and a lot of them have to do with scenes involving Jasper, so I don't know if this is purposeful, but there is, like, in Jasper's backstory, there's a shot where he is like center frame facing the camera, and there's a lot of movement happening around him, and the whole camera is like shaking, like there's like, and I don't understand the purpose of it. It's not like, I don't know if it was supposed to be like an emotional effect that's supposed to like mirror Jasper's mindset at the time or something, or feeling like his foundation was shaky, but in the context of that moment, you don't get any of that. It just feels like bad camera work. And another weird camera thing that happens is there's a scene, and I think in the forefront of the scene is Bella and Edward and Emmett, actually, and they're having a discussion, and then Jasper comes in the back of the frame, and he says something like, let's go outside and practice or whatever. Like, I think this was right before the wolves were going to come over, and he was going to like give everybody like the fight breakdown or whatever. And Jasper comes in and he says, he has like 2 lines, and the camera never racked focus to Jasper. Never. And that's just a number 1 rule in cinematography, is your focus racks to whoever is talking. So to have somebody standing back there completely out of focus speaking 2 entire lines seemed like It just seems like bad cinematography to me. So I didn't like that at all. I think that what's unfortunate is that so many, those are like negatives, but I think overall, I think aesthetically, this movie is actually really nicely done, and it's really well edited. I like the score and soundtrack, like you said. I think there's a lot more positives than negatives, but the unfortunate thing is that in movies, your aesthetics are only as good as your story can present in them. And so a lot of these really nice aesthetics get completely lost in the ridiculous story. Like, you know, the lovely scenes in the snow, the scene, you know, we've got this lovely snowy landscape, and it's ruined because instead we get to see Bella manipulating Jacob in the snow. So that's now what we're looking at, and not actually the nice snowy landscape. So I think it's just an unfortunate thing is that a lot just gets lost. A lot of the nice aesthetics just get lost. So that's 1 out of 2 points for me.
All right. So next category, as always, personal taste and preference, total possible score of 2.
I'm guessing 0.
Yes. I gave this 0 out of 2 points. I didn't think I could like anything less than the last 2 films, but here we are. If I could give this a negative score, I would give it a negative score. Personally, I think this movie is overall just really boring. Nothing interesting or engaging happens in this movie. And it's even worse because we're being coerced into buying into the plot of a teenager committing to marriage and becoming a vampire with a toxic, reckless relationship perpetuated only with kissing and gaslighting and manipulation, which is snake oil being sold to us as altruism and role models and true love. And I hate it.
Okay, fair.
The end. 0 out of 2.
Okay. For me, I gave it half a point out of 2. That entire half point just lies in my nostalgia. But I genuinely think that this is the worst of the films, maybe. I don't know. That's a hard thing to say because, I mean, these movies aren't good. But this one is, I think, it's so skippable. You could skip this entire movie and just go to the next part of the story. And you haven't missed anything of real value. It's just so skippable. And I just like it less and less every time I see it. And I like the characters less and less. And so, I don't know. I gave it half a point just because I do have a little bit of attachment to the series. But this, like, Eclipse in particular is it's just so boring. And just, there's just nothing of real, like, interest or even entertainment. It's like even the entertainment value of this is low. Even if you look at it for nothing else but just like brain mush entertainment, like even in that regard, it's got just nothing. So yeah, that's it for me.
All right, and our last category is creativity, so total possible score of 1.
You gave this a 0.
I did. I also gave this a 0. My notes, it just says trash. But I did write, you know, some notes here. In all seriousness, I really enjoy new twists on fantasy and classic or iconic characters, you know, creatures, stories, monster movies. I like it. I like a good retelling and reimagining, and I think most people do. That's kind of why Disney even exists as a brand, is because it was retelling these classic stories. But the creativity in this film is so muddied by a problematic plot and unlikable characters that it really is a trashy romance story you'd find in a drugstore. It's just marketed and catered to young adults. But I think my thoughts are that that's why the Twilight moms were such a big thing, because the people that were the Twilight moms were already reading these kinds of stories. They were just picking it up at CVS and they'd never had a movie made about it before. And so, to me, that's not creative. Like, this, especially the plot of this movie, but I would argue the series of Twilight overall is nothing different from those trashy romance novels that you see sad women reading alone in Chick-fil-A on a Saturday morning because they have nowhere else to go. So, I mean, that's literally the plot of Twilight, in my opinion, as I'm watching these films, and it's especially the plot of this movie. So 0 out of 1 point.
For me, for creativity, I gave it 0 out of 1 point as well. I think anything potentially creative that could come out of Eclipse gets completely buried under the exhaustion of this movie. Everything about the characters, the plot, is just so, like, drawn out and strung out to the point of, like, it just feels like a slog to, like, get through it. So it just kills any creative, like, potential that I think that this movie would have. So no creativity points for me. All right, so your overall score, if I'm correct, is 0.5 point out of 10.
Yes, my total score for Twilight Eclipse is 0.5 out of 10.
-3, which is still, I think, the lowest score I've ever given.
I think this is the lowest score I've ever given.
Yeah.
I don't think I've given anything less than 1 point.
Yeah.
Until today.
Yeah.
Milestone episode, guys.
Lowest score for both of us.
Lowest score.
So, okay. Well, are you ready to do some lightning round? Do you have anything else to say?
No. I'm ready for some lightning rounds.
All right. Favorite character?
I mean, like, honestly, nobody.
Okay.
I hate all of them.
Okay.
But if I have to pick one to answer this question, probably the girl werewolf that turns into a wolf and runs away, because that's what I wish I could have done in this movie.
Leah.
Yes.
I think I'm going to pick Seth. Okay, least favorite character.
This is also a very hard question.
Yeah. My answer is Bella.
Yeah.
She's just awful.
Yeah.
And
I
hypocritical.
mean, Bella and Edward are horrible, but at the same time, I kind of feel like they deserve each other, you know?
Okay.
So, and I cannot get over the fact that Jacob is so persistent. And it's like, dude, no means no. She said very clearly. It's not like Bella's just giving him the runaround
or
and
like
still
a
trying
vague,
to,
or like, let me think
still
about it.
Or trying to lead him on.
Yeah.
It's like she explicitly said, no, I don't love you like that. I don't want to kiss you. Like, no. And the fact that he's like angrily insistent that she loves me, not you.
Yeah.
And I know. I mean, that just grated on me.
It's
the
a
whole
nightmare.
movie.
That's a nightmare of a man.
It is. Like, that is psychologically dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, this man is gonna stand in your
Kidnap
bedroom
somebody.
and watch you sleep. And
Oh, Edward's already doing that.
yeah, I
though.
know, but Jacob's gonna do it, and he's gonna take you and put you in his basement, chained to a lead pipe or something. So
Because you love him.
Because-
you just don't know it yet.
right. So I feel like that. For that reason, I'd probably say Jacob was my least favorite character, because at least Edward and Bella, just they kind of deserve each other.
Yeah.
Like they're the exact same person, just male and female versions of them, and they deserve each other's horribleness.
Yeah.
But Jacob, dude, I thought you were good looking out when you were like, are you kidding me? You'd have to say goodbye to everything, and like you'd lose everything. And then he's like, love me. And it's like, dude.
Okay, favorite scene?
I can't even remember all the scenes because it's so forgettable. That is a hard question. Tell me yours, and then I'll...
Okay, so I think my favorite scene is in Rosalie's flashback when she was like, I got my revenge on him, and you see her fiance, and he's like crying, scared in the room, and he hears her coming. She like flings the door open, and her eyes are all red, and she's in a wedding gown, and I'm like, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually think my favorite scene was around that part of the film. And I actually think that I liked the scene where Rosalie is talking to Bella, And
Out on the porch.
Yeah, and I just think mostly because I think that actress does such a good job of just being very calm and very subtle. Like she just does such a good job of acting with stillness and just less is more. And I just really appreciated that. I felt like, oh, I'm watching somebody that's like really taking this seriously and just doing a good job. And even when she says to her, you know, that, what is it? She says something to the effect of, there's one thing that you'll crave more than anything else, and it's blood. Mm-hmm. And she just delivers that line just so well. And it's just very matter of factly, and it didn't seem melodramatic. And I feel like any other part of the film, it would have just been very melodramatic or very sensationalized. And I think the actress just did such a good job of making it just feel very real. And it was almost just like the amount of quietness in that scene that she delivered was just very, very good. So
yeah, I think Nikki Reed, who plays Rosalie, I think she does a really, really good job, like you said. And I think she speaks in such a way, or she acts in such a way where every like small gesture or vocalization that she does seems to add to the intention behind what she's saying. Like every chuckle means something, every smirk means something. It's like it feels like when you're watching her, like that, like nothing is accidental. Mm-hmm. Like that she's just very purposeful in like her delivery.
Yeah. I have not looked into her at all, but I'd be very interested to see what else she's done, because I feel like she has a lot more talent than this movie gives her credit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question: favorite set or like location, I guess.
I'm trying to remember what sets we get in this film without confusing it with prior films.
Some things are like
very similar.
Yeah, or used again, so I don't think it's bad to necessarily choose one.
Yeah. I thought any of the scenes that are outside, I think, are done really well. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned like the one with like the water.
Yeah, I thought that shot was really pretty, but it didn't really seem like a set.
Okay.
To me, I thought the set, I guess technically it's outside, but it's still technically a set, where at the reservation when they're having their like council meeting or whatever, and they're just sitting around the fire, like it seemed really simple, but it also seemed like it just fit really well. It was like kind of one of those moments where the set just felt very deliberate in the way things were kind of set up. But I really don't have a good memory of everything because it's kind of dark. You know, it's dark and the fire's going. So there wasn't a lot to see visually. But yeah, I think that you didn't really get a good look at it, but the house where Sam and all the werewolves live, I think that they do a good job there, where it's really, things seem kind of like, it feels homey, but it seems a little eclectic. Mm-hmm. Like the people that live there aren't really well organized, you know, but it seems very like put together, like it still feels like a home where people live. Mm-hmm. But you don't see a whole lot of it. So it's tough because I think there are a lot of really good sets in this movie, but there's not any one specific set that feels like a standout to me. I would say the snow scenes, but I just, in general, I don't like snowy sets or scenes or snow. Like, to me, it's just kind of boring. That's just like a personal taste, so it wouldn't be my favorite. Yeah. You know, I think it's done really well, but yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of a tough question.
That's fine. My pick would be like the snowy cliffs. I think it's like it's not something that we've seen in the series so far, so I like when we get to see something aesthetically that's just very different than like what we've been seeing. So I just enjoy, and especially because I do think it is done really nicely and it's really pretty. So I enjoy seeing like a whole new look, I guess, to a scene that we haven't been seeing over the past 2 movies. So that would be my pick. Okay, last question. So since the story sucks so bad, if you could take away something in the movie, like a plot point or whatever, take away one thing to improve it, what would you pick?
I actually thought about this. I would take Bella out of the movie.
Okay.
I thought the scene where Jacob and Edward are in the tent talking to each other, I felt like that could have been the movie. Like, that whole plot could have been the movie. This whole movie could have been about the vampires and the werewolves having to come together against a common enemy. And that would have been a really interesting plot. Mm-hmm. And Robert Pattinson and Taylor Lautner could have carried that story very, very well.
Yeah.
And I actually was thinking, in kind of making some of my notes, like, if that was the whole movie, like, that was the kind of the climax of the movie, was when the two of them are having this, like, genuine heart-to-heart conversation, like, that would have been a way more interesting movie.
They should have sent Bella to Florida on her own and left her there through the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, my answer was actually going to be something really, really similar. I was going to say I would take out every instance of anything that had to do, like, with romance. Because I think if we had focused more on, like, the newborn army, we could have expanded on that, made it more interesting. We could have explored the backstories of the Cullens, you know, because we never even really get, still in the series, we still haven't gotten Esme's backstory or Emmett's backstory. We could have expounded upon that. We could have expounded on some more of the werewolves. I want to know about those secondary characters that we see maybe for, you know, a few minutes. We could have explored all of that. It could have been a lot more about, like, having to come together and, like, fight for a common goal. We could have expounded upon the Volturi, help us understand the history of the Volturi and why they are to be feared and why they're a threat to the Cullens. Like, we don't understand any of that. They don't give us any of that information. This would have been the movie to do that. But instead, we throw all of that potential away for the fact of Bella and Edward just being like, no, you first. No, you first. No, you first. And it's so exhausting. So I think if I were to take away something to improve the film, it would simply be romance. So that's my answer. And that's all my lightning round questions.
All right.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think another, I should say no. I do, yes. Yes, I do think another part of this whole plot, the overarching plot of Twilight, that prevents us from caring, because it prevents Bella from caring, is that Bella has no reason not to. You know what I mean? It's like in the Hunger Games, at the beginning, this is not a spoiler if you've not seen the Hunger Games, but in the Hunger Games, Katniss, her reason why is because she has a younger sister and a mom that need her to take care of them. And so that's her reason why. Like, that's her why, is because she has a younger sister who needs her. And I feel like if Bella had one person that needed her, now we have a really interesting plot, because here's what she wants, and this is something that she is really wanting to do, but really in the existing plot of Twilight, Bella has no reason not to. Her mom doesn't care. Her mom's very happy. She doesn't really like her dad because they're estranged. And so she has no reason not to. And if we gave Bella a reason why, like maybe her dad was really sick and she moved to Forks to take care of him. Yeah. And he's her reason why to say no. Now we have a more interesting story. And it gives us a reason to have Bella be more likable, because now she has to care about somebody other than herself.
But see, Bella's been, and this is just a problem in the setup of the story in general, is that Bella from the beginning has been painted as a loner. And so Edward is the only one that she really wants to spend time with. And then oh, but wait, there's also Jacob who wants to spend time with her. Oh, and now all these kids at school want to spend time. And so, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, because it's, like, drilled into our heads that, like, Bella has nobody and, you know, nobody needs Bella. So she can be as reckless as she wants. And it's just it's just, like, an exhausting, overdone. And that's what I mean about, like the angsty teenager trope. I'm just tired of it. Like, it's okay to care about people outside of your vampire boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like,
it even would have been more interesting if Bella was, like, if Bella came from Jacob's, like, tribe. Like, if she, now it would have been a little tropey and overdone because now we have the Montagues and the Capulets of Romeo and Juliet, but it almost would have been more interesting if Bella's whole community was the enemy of Edward's whole community.
Yeah.
And now we have this kind of conflict here where if she leaves and becomes a vampire, maybe she's Jacob's adopted sister, and now we don't have the love triangle part between Jacob and Bella. Now we have a sibling, familial, like, you can't go back on your family, you can't abandon your family, like, this is your tribe. Maybe she was adopted into his family, and so she's felt like an outsider, and now she has these other people, but that would cause insane conflict between the vampires and werewolves if a member of their tribe married into a vampire clan. Like, now we'd have a problem there. I mean, that could have been more interesting because now Bella has a reason why, because she has her community and her family and her people and her tribe, and, you know, so she can't fracture these relationships because of that. But Bella has no relationships. She doesn't even really have a relationship with Edward.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest problem with Twilight overall, is that Bella has no reason to not be selfish.
Right.
And neither does Edward.
Yeah, true. Fair enough.
So.
All right. We're just improving.
Script doctors right here.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We hope you had a good time. If you didn't, feel free to tell us why. If you completely disagree with us and think that Twilight Eclipse is the best movie of all time, please share your opinions with us. We would be very glad to debate them with you. Links to our show notes, Patreon, socials, suggestion box are all on our website at lionandmousepodcast.com. You can review this episode on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Let us know what you're thinking. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye.